Great. We will go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to today's webinar. We are joined today. We're Instructional Technologies. My name is Tom Schoenborn. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Instructional Technologies. And we are joined today by our friend Jim Smith from ProDrivers, and we'll introduce him a little bit more here in just a second. We are going to be talking about winter safety tips and advice. Couple of housekeeping notes before we get started and before I introduce our two primary speakers. We are recording today's webinar, so if you have to bail out to go deal with something else, we will be sending out a recording after the fact. All of you are on mute. So we can't hear you. No fourth graders chatting in the background. And but if you have any questions, please ask them in the Q&A tab, which you'll find up there in that Zoom Chrome. And we will take questions at the end of the presentation. So with that, I want to go ahead and introduce our first speaker. Today we're joined by Roy Broomfield. Many of you guys have met him before and heard him talk in some of our other webinars. He's our senior safety consultant here at Instructional Technologies. Roy, thanks for joining us again.
Oh, thanks, Tom. I'm glad to be able to join you today. For those of you who don't know, that we at ITI have been providing training solutions for many years, since 1995. So those of you who don't know who we are, you're going to be lucky enough to have some additional information provided by Tom a little later on. But really just to let you know that we are your training solutions provider, and we provide all sorts of solutions, which I'm sure Tom will go into some more detail a little bit later on. And with that, I'd like to hand the conversation over to Jim Smith and talk a little bit about himself and ProDrivers.
Well, thank you very much for asking us to join the presentation today, Roy, and we certainly value our partnership with ITI. We've been partners for several years and attribute a lot of our safety success to that relationship that we've held with Instructional Technologies. You know, just a little bit about ProDrivers. We are a leading provider of professional drivers all across the country. We service over 4,000 clients. We hire and screen, place both CDL and non-CDL drivers. And we have a very growing network of over 70 branch locations across the country. And we just have that cornerstone belief that people matter. So we base our safety program certainly on that concept that the drivers we support and certainly their family, as well as the motoring public, they matter. And very, very honored to work for an organization that feels that way. So thank you again for having us.
Outstanding. Thanks, Jim. We're really happy to have you here. This was a real easy one for us to come up with somebody that we wanted to talk to about this. Winter safety is really critical to everybody's success and safety here over the next coming months. And all of the conversations I've had with Jim over the last several years, he's always really impressed me with his real genuine commitment to people. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. Let's have a meeting about our meeting. We're going to talk a little bit about the winter risks and what it is specifically that all of you are facing out there. Then we're going to have sort of a Q&A about winter priorities and safety with Roy and Jim. And then at the end, we'll take some audience questions. So I'm just going to jump into a couple of these winter risks. And this is stuff that we've known over the years and wanted to share with you. When we talk about winter risk, we talk about the four horsemen of winter risk. Maybe we could call it the four reindeer of winter risk. But those major issues are traction, both on the road as well as in the parking lot and as you're walking around. Visibility due to rain and snow and shorter days, longer nights. Fatigue that comes from all of the above, as well as stress, because it is such a busy season, and especially this year with 2020, with things being so 2020 being just such a crazy year. There's going to be so much more e-commerce. Retail is going to be really different, and we expect the load size and frequency and urgency to be a lot higher, leading to a lot more stress. So I wanted to throw out a couple of stats here. 17% of all traffic crashes happen in winter conditions. So what we're talking about there is snow and ice. Now you think about that, 17%, that's almost 1 out of every 5, and you're talking about during a period where only during only 25% of the year. So it's a really high percentage of crashes happen. Now here's some good things and bad things, sort of a double-edged sword. Traffic speeds decrease 30 to 40% in winter conditions, which luckily leads to a decrease in fatal road crashes during the winter. However, it does dramatically increase non-fatal crashes, a little stat that we found from CarSurance. So the likelihood that your drivers are going to be in a crash during the winter months does go up pretty dramatically. And in addition, that those traffic speeds being decreased so greatly leads to increased traffic, loads being late, routes being more difficult than usual, and drivers being stressed out and pushed to try to make up time wherever they can. And then let's say they arrive at their destination and get out of either their van or their box truck or their heavy duty truck. 25% of ice and snow related falls occur in parking lots, and 20% of slip and falls that occur in parking lots result in lost time from work. Worse, 22% of all slip and fall accidents result in more than a month away of work. That's 1 out of every 5 slip and fall accidents result in more than a month away from work. And $40,000 is the average cost of a slip and fall accident when somebody ends up missing time from work. And as I alluded to earlier, stress and burnout is definitely a big thing that happens during the wintertime. We've got an increased workload. The urgency is there because, all of a sudden St. Louis is out of Tickle Me Elmos and we need to get a load out there. You've got drivers and employees who want their home time now, right at a time when we have this increased urgency and these additional loads. And our routines are disrupted because the days are shorter, the nights are longer, the weather is worse, traffic is worse, all of these things. So with all of that, there is a real need to change up the way that we approach winter safety and training right around this time of year, probably even a little bit earlier. So let's talk winter safety. And then I promise I'm going to stop talking now and hand it over to people that you actually want to hear from. Jim and Roy, what are the primary worries for drivers and fleets during the winter? Roy, do you want to jump in first on this one?
Sure. I think obviously there's a lot of worries carriers and fleets are going to have, and drivers. And I was giving this some more thought this morning. I mean, one of the big things is obviously the weather. And, the colder weather makes everything more challenging. So whether it's just even getting in and out of the vehicle or the amount of time it takes to do anything, that's obviously a huge challenge for everybody. I mean, even this morning, getting up and getting out, it took me more time to find a jacket, a coat, some gloves and a hat. So, all of these conditions are going to make doing everything a lot slower and a lot harder. So that is one of the big concerns, I think, for operating during the winter. It takes a lot more time to get things done.
You know, I'd tag on to that, and I think you hit it right on the head, Tom, when you talked about traction, visibility, fatigue, and stress. I mean, those are your primary worries. If I had to pick one of those that I think is the biggest, most important of those four items, it would certainly be traction. And that is not just traction for the vehicle itself and making sure that you've got tires that are equipped for the for the driving conditions, but certainly the traction of the shoes that folks are wearing as they're walking around. So traction it would be the biggest concern that I have, or the biggest worry that I have during the winter.
Outstanding. Yeah, I agree. Those are all a lot of the big ones. It's the amount of time that it takes to get yourself ready and your vehicle's ready and pre-tripped. Everything is just made a little bit more difficult with the weather, and then that traction that is a result of that. So leading off of, excuse me, building off of that, what are the top three training points that you guys are really hearing from your clients and your fleets that you work with, as well as that you're working on specifically within there, Jim? I'm not sure which want to hop in here first, but
You know, I'll go first on this one, Tom, and just keeping on that theme of traction. Traction is everything. I think you know, when you look at injuries throughout the trucking industry, as long as I've been in the business, which is over 20 years, slips, trips, and falls are going to be your biggest opportunity for injuries for drivers. And certainly traction is imperative there. And 3 points of contact is certainly the biggest opportunity for training that I would see. You know, you've always got to make sure that your drivers are using 3 points of contact. And what happens during the winter is one of those 3 points is compromised. You know, typically it may be the handhold that may be somewhat slippery as the driver's getting in and out of that vehicle. And so they do have the 3 points of contact, but there's ice that may build up on some of the handholds, or maybe even the areas that the driver's feet are positioned on. So it's imperative that the driver know to inspect those during the pre-trips and make sure that they've got that 3 points of contact. And just a reinforced effort to make sure that you're talking about slips, trips, and falls. That's always something you want to take advantage of.
Yeah, I agree there, Jim. And, you know, from me, from the discussions I've had with some of our clients, the three things probably I would want to remind them about is, you know, making sure the drivers slow down, make sure they're vigilant. So, you know, it ties into those slips, trips, and falls, and also be prepared. So, you know, again, it comes back to making sure they got proper footwear, proper pre-trips, making sure that ice and those any conditions that may cause those falls are being removed whenever possible.
that's great. Roy, talk a little bit more about slowing down. You had a really good anecdote that you were telling me about when you were a driver about the advisable speed.
Yeah, sure, Tom. One of the discussions, you know, I'm sure that many of us have with drivers over the years is speed for conditions. You know, there seems to be this misconception out there, as long as the driver maintains the posted speed limit, that they're doing the right speed for those conditions. But ultimately, when you have those discussions with the driver, they say, you know, I was doing the speed limit. The next thing I know, I'm parked in the middle of the rhubarb, in the middle of a field somewhere, and I don't know what happened. Well, obviously that, you know, easily explains that they were going too fast for those driving conditions. And the anecdote that Tom was talking about, one winter I was driving on a 2-lane roadway, and I had to come to a checkpoint where I had to do a stop. And we literally got out of the vehicle. And as I stepped down from the vehicle, I looked down at my feet and I thought I was sliding on some ice. It turned out I wasn't sliding, it was my vehicle. Because of the camber of the road, the truck had actually started to slide to the side of the road. So, you know, in that case there, I would almost say that going 0 miles an hour was too fast for those conditions. and it was probably time for me to find a safe place to stop and wait until those conditions improved.
No kidding. Wow. You know, that reminds me, there was a good stat I saw about 70% of the US is in a zone where they are, you know, during the months of November to February, are at risk of getting a snowfall of up to 5 inches. 70% of all the highway miles in the US are sort of under threat of actual winter weather. So sometimes people like to think that it doesn't maybe really apply to me. I'm not going to find my truck sliding off the side of the road like Roy's did. But the reality is that you know, we saw Atlanta come to an absolute halt a couple of years ago when they got like a 1/4 inch of ice all over the roads.
Hey, Tom, if I can just add one, I certainly agree with Roy's point there, and just want to add, certainly won't read verbatim, but in 392.14, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations state that extreme caution is required when operating a commercial motor vehicle in hazardous conditions. So to Roy's point, just because the speed limit sign says 55, that does not mean in hazardous conditions that it's safe to operate at those posted speeds. So it's imperative that that the driver use extreme caution. You know, guys, we live in a world of the nuclear verdict, and any time that there's an accident involving, you know, extreme weather, they're going to cite that reference from the regulations and ask the motor carriers, what did you actually do to make sure you were using that extreme caution? So certainly training is something that you should look at to show you're going above and beyond just that normal driving.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that that sort of ties into what Roy was talking about in terms of being vigilant with folks. Jim, what are some of the things that you do to, I mean, obviously you guys are using ProTrip training, but you don't leave it at that. You reach out to your drivers on a pretty regular basis, right?
Well, we do, and certainly we utilize the ProTrip training for our orientations. Tom, we make sure that every driver that we hire is trained, and we have a customized module that we use which includes slips, trips, and falls. We also use what we call a quarterly safety challenge, where we will make sure that we pick a relevant topic again. And during the winter, we select some winter driving modules and reinforce that training on those topics. So we use it a multitude of ways. We also can use it for use the training for remedial training. So when the driver does have that unfortunate accident, we can reinforce the learning opportunities by making sure they watch that module. And many times, to be proactive, we will also assign that training to other drivers that we have at the account, not just the one that had the accident, but other drivers that may have been involved. And then we customize training. So I'm in Denver, Colorado this morning. We have accounts, that winter mountain driving is very important. So, we assign lessons on winter driving that can be customized to certain clients that we use. And again, we have about 4,000 clients. So everyone has unique needs when it comes to training.
Outstanding. So let's switch topics a little bit here. So we talked about, sort of overall, but let's talk about injury prevention in the winter. There's a lot going on. We've got, drivers who are working long hours. We're having a lot of new routes show up, increased size of the loads. You've got busy traffic, although this year we'll see how busy the traffic really is. You've got drivers who are distracted and stressed out and burned out and operating in sort of harsh conditions. What are some of the top 3 tips that you guys have for fleets, for folks here today to prevent injuries in the winter?
I think you're going to see a bit of a theme here from me. It's again the same 3 things. It's going to be slow down, be vigilant, and be prepared. Slowing down is going to give you the opportunity to identify any possible hazards. Be vigilant, make sure that, they're making sure they're clean off ice and snow off the vehicles, and then be prepared, have the winter clothing, have the appropriate footwear, making sure that they have gloves and things that are going to prevent their hands from slipping and sliding when they're getting in and out of vehicles or walking or moving around their vehicle.
Yeah, Roy, you were at Schneider when I think they had introduced their, maybe they hadn't introduced it, but they had I believe a boot program where they made sure that they just removed any possibility of the footwear being an issue by providing boots. Was that a successful program?
Oh, very much so. Again, many of the drivers either claimed that they didn't have footwear, or they didn't know where it was, or they'd left it at home. And by implementing that program, that Schneider had actually done some testing themselves and found out which footwear would be appropriate for use in the trucks. And then on the driver's anniversary, they received a voucher each year to get a new pair of footwear, and that reduced the slip and fall injuries greatly, and also removed the comments from the drivers that they didn't have any footwear, because they knew that each year the driver was issued with a new pair of footwear, and that also made sure that the footwear didn't get worn out, the tread was always adequate, and they weren't going around in footwear that really wasn't suitable for winter conditions.
Yeah. And tell me a little bit about, we've talked about this, especially for drivers that are doing deliveries, box truck drivers, sedan drivers that are going into workplaces, traveling salespeople, things like that. ITI has training for both heavy duty trucks as well as for the light duty folks. Tell me a little bit about sort of how you can be prepared, how you pre-walk a route if possible before you are walking in with a heavy load, either on a hand truck or whatever. What are some of the things that folks should be doing when they are going in and out, in terms of making sure that they, like I said, are know what they're facing before they get to the front door?
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, Tom, that would be the best approach. I mean, to look at the vehicle, look where you're parked, and look where you're going. You need to look at what potential hazards are going to be on the floor. As you said, they could be coming into that facility carrying several packages. They could be pushing a cart, pulling a pallet jack. So, it's going to make it harder for them maybe to see the obstacles. So in an ideal world, yes, go out and look at the route that they're going to be taking, look at the surface they're going to be walking on, look to make sure there are no obstructions, and make sure that doors are open, and they're kept open so that it would facilitate getting in and out of the facility with those.
Good. Jim, what are some of the things that you guys focus on with your drivers? Because you face a really interesting challenge in that you have clients and drivers all across the spectrum and facing probably almost every condition possible. What are some of the things that you guys try to do to narrow in on that?
Well, you bring up certainly a valid point, Tom. When you provide drivers in a contingent labor situation, they may not be to Roy's point, that may not be that ideal situation where they know the route. You may have a driver that is it's his first time on the route, versus company drivers that handle that route every day, and so they certainly know the areas that may get them in trouble, where that driver that's first time on the account may not know that. So we do our best to identify those hazards with the client. We perform what we call a client alignment meeting with every company we do business with, which, number one, that's required by OSHA, that we do a site evaluation. But we do our best to uncover those hazards prior to sending the drivers out. And to Roy's point, we use the term the 3 Ps. We want to make sure that they're prepared and they're protected and they prevent. So we certainly use the training from ProTred to help us do that.
That's great. So this is a topic that I think sometimes people overlook a little bit, right up until last weekend when everybody popped our clocks. Let's see, we fall back and spring forward. So tell me, what happens with these shorter days and longer nights to increase risk for both driving and, and again, out of the vehicle injuries?
I'll go first on that, Tom. That about 5% of the population develop some type of seasonal depression as the days get shorter throughout the year. And you hear the term the winter blues, but there's actually a medical diagnosis of that, which is called seasonal affective disorder. As our bodies absorb less serotonin from the sun, people tend to be impacted by that. So about 4 out of 5 people that are affected are women in that situation, but that can cause symptoms, everything from low energy and sleep problems, even changes in weight, situations that could impact a driver's medical card, prevent them from getting that medical card, but certainly it causes fatigue. So as drivers have that low energy, they're fatigued, that's certainly when mistakes are going to happen. So it's imperative that we get ahead of that ball game. And we understand this is a situation that we deal with every winter as we have shorter days.
Yeah. And Roy, you were talking about in our meeting about this, there's also the really obvious answer, which is it's dark and it's raining and your windshield wipers may not be particularly great.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with the shorter days, which means, we're going to be operating in a lot more darker hours. So, as we all know, doing anything in the dark is a lot harder than it is doing it in the daytime. So whether that's finding somewhere to park, finding our way into the customer, or even just navigating on the roads, we don't often get as much practice operating in the dark times as we do during the daytime. So again, that can definitely be a challenge with these with less daylight.
Outstanding. So the other part of this that, Jim sort of touched on there is that we do have, this sort of the mental side of what happens in the winter, and certainly the longer nights and shorter days, the holidays and everything else. How do managers help their people deal with this sort of increased workload, the urgency, the sort of the break in routines? What are some of the things that you guys have heard about doing to sort of help people feel appreciated, so that you can, maintain some retention?
I think, Jim will probably be able to address this better than I, but I know that having that leadership for the drivers themselves, let them know that, this is a safety orientated company, and, communicating that message, because, these drivers are going to be feeling as if they need to rush. They are going to have an increased workload. And as we've discussed, some of these other challenges they're going to face during the winter does put a lot of pressure on the drivers. But it's important that they have the support and the understanding of their leadership to let them know that, injury prevention and their personal safety are the number one priority within the organization. And I think that goes a long way to letting the drivers know that, that the managers have their back when it comes to these this time of year.
Yeah. One of the things that we've heard about when it comes to increasing retention is this notion that there's sort of a timeline where people have a sense of what to expect. And if they know what to expect, when we get increasingly busy, we know that we're going to be able to put another person on your route, or we're going to be able to divide it up. This is when we're going to be able to bring in some folks from a staffing agency like ProDrivers. When you let people know the challenges that they're going to face and the fact that you have a plan for dealing with them, it provides people a sense of calm, that it has been thought of, and that they're not, it's one less thing for them to worry about, and it allows them to sort of focus on their driving, focusing on their delivery, focusing on their customer service. So let me hop to this next question real quick. Jim, what is it that you want fleets to do to help staffing agency drivers and workers be safe out there? You talked a little bit about that alignment meeting. Can you talk a little bit about this? Because it is a big thing that happens during the busy season, right?
Well, it certainly is. As companies ramp up, they hire folks to help them out throughout that busy season, and that's where we certainly get involved. Now we have other situations where we provide long-term assignments year round. But from a safety standpoint, Tom, I think it's just imperative that that clients know that they need to fully immerse that contingent labor force into their own safety program. We want to make sure that they make those drivers feel at home and part of the program that where they're actually working. So make sure they're involved in the drivers meetings that they may have. Make sure they get all those bulletins about safety or any training that the company drivers get. Whether you use our company or some of our competition, we want to make sure that you reach out to us or again that competition and say, hey, how are you training those drivers to be safe? What are you doing to be proactive and make sure that that you're sharing any information that you have with those drivers? And again, one of the things we do is we ramp up that training. We use ProTrip for in a multitude of ways. It's mandatory. Every driver we hire, we train on pre-trip inspections. We have a customized orientation that talks about everything from slips, trips, and falls, and reporting accidents and injuries. And we're also very proud that we train every driver we hire on truckers against trafficking. We actually just trained our 10,000th driver on truckers against trafficking to combat human trafficking. So that's something we're very, very proud of. Again, these quarterly safety challenges that we do, we pick a relevant topic. In the summer, we may talk about heat stress, and certainly now we would talk about winter driving and what a driver can do to combat those hazards. But we may also customize it. Again, maybe we have a client where they have to chain tires or other unique hazards that client has to deal with, and so we certainly lean on you as our partner to help provide good training in that area.
Yeah, well, it is always a pleasure working with you guys because you really do care about your drivers, and I know that it's made a big impact, on your level of safety there. And just hearing you talk about sort of the way that you approach things, in different seasons and using these quarterly safety challenges. I saw a really good stat right at the end of summer, which meant I didn't really get a chance to share it, which was something like 70% of all heat illness injuries that happen on the job happen in the first 3 days of employment, which is speaks a lot to why you need to train people on those things in those first few days. Jim, can you tell us a little bit more about how you run those quarterly safety challenges? People are always interested in hearing about these sort of the specifics of programs like that to the degree you're comfortable with.
Thanks for that opportunity, Tom. That is just something we're very, very proud of. Is a lot of our training is mandatory for drivers, and so I think when you have mandatory training, you have an opportunity to lose some of the effectiveness. You see companies that tend to just check a box by saying, these are the things that are mandatory, and you check those boxes and it's done. But what we're really proud of with quarterly safety challenges, this is not mandatory training. It is training that we lay out for our drivers, and we encourage our branches to meet about a 40% target of all drivers on whatever that quarterly topic is. And, I use the term many, many times, Tom. I think that training, it's probably just as important that your operations staff take the training and they can articulate the value of that training as they encourage the drivers to do that. So that way they're getting a double message. They're getting the training itself, but they're also getting a message from their operations staff, the person that is the linchpin in that safety program. The frontline manager is probably the most important key to safety in any organization. So they're hearing from that person, hey, this is important. I care about your safety. Again, at ProDrivers, we say people matter. And so they're hearing that they matter. And so it helps the drivers to buy into that program. So very, very proud of that. And we, we give some incentives. Again, it's not mandatory, but we offer, we do random drawings for our drivers, give away $500 gift cards to drivers that complete this training in a quarterly safety challenge.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, I agree with that. And that's why I admire the program that you run. I think the fact that people care about what their managers care about, or at least they should. And the more the managers are talking about it, and the more the managers are showing that they're doing it and that it matters to them, then it'll matter to the people that they are working above. And I think that part of your program is one that I think is really critical to success.
I certainly agree. And we've certainly seen success. And for 9 out of the last 10 years, Tom, we brought down our injury frequency rate as a result of that. So very, very proud of that program.
Wow, that's great. All right, so one more quick question, and then I'm going to go into tell everybody a little bit about us, and then we will be start taking questions. So if you want to start popping questions into that Q&A tab up in the Zoom area, we will have those questions ready to go. So let's talk a little bit about how maintenance and pre-trip inspections can improve winter safety. Roy, do you want to jump in on this one?
Yeah, sure, Tom. We often get asked about this, is there anything special a driver needs to do during their inspection for winter? And really there shouldn't be. They should be checking the same things throughout the year. However, there are obviously certain safety items, things like tires, as Jim mentioned, making sure they have adequate tread depth, or the tires are suitable for the conditions and the locations they're operating in. But also things like lights. Obviously, they should be checking their make operation throughout the year. But as we talked a little bit earlier, that we're going to be operating in a lot more darker hours. So making sure that we have that visibility to others to make sure all of our lights are working. Also, that the driver can see all the hazards. So making sure that their headlights and their lights are working. But additional things might be fuel, making sure they have enough fuel for the day. If they get stranded somewhere, it would be nice if they have the extra fuel, they can run the engine, keep themselves warm and safe while they're waiting for either someone to come to the rescue or a maintenance to come out to them. And also some of the other fluids, they're going to obviously use a lot more windshield washer fluid, things like that, need to make sure that they're reviewed during those inspections.
And you mentioned a little something too when we had talked about that, about making sure that you're giving your drivers that extra amount of time. Tell me a little bit about how you really emphasize that with your frontline managers as well as your drivers.
Yeah, as we talked a little bit earlier, with the cold weather, it's going to take a lot longer to do some of these tasks. But the other thing is, there are going to be additional tasks. If you've got a vehicle parked up in the yard, it may be covered in snow or ice. So they're going to need that additional time to make sure they can get all that stuff cleaned off, make sure the vehicle's ready to get out on the road. So, checking your lights might be in the summer, just making sure they're working. Come the winter, they may need to spend a little bit more time making sure those lights are all cleaned off. There's no ice or snow or any other kind of buildup on there that's going to impede the safe operation of that equipment.
Outstanding. And Jim, you guys use pre-trip as one of your standard courses when you're onboarding folks and on a regular basis, right? Pre-trip during the winter is pretty critical.
Absolutely. And, Roy brings up certainly some very valid points, things a driver should check all the time, not just in the winter. But it is imperative. That's one of the mandatory modules we select. We think every driver that we hire should certainly make sure that we verify they've got good pre-trip training. So every driver does that. The one thing I would add to what Roy said, a great list he had was windshield wipers. He may have mentioned that, and also the heating and defrosting equipment on that vehicle. It's obviously very important that they go through that and make sure those items work. They're serviceable.
Yeah. One of the things too, obviously having those additional pieces of equipment, the windshield scraper. But then the other thing too that I've seen a lot of folks talk about is just a simple shower squeegee. Especially for that first thing in the morning, just to get all those droplets off, because the way the light, especially headlights and whatnot, can refract off of those water droplets. Obviously, if you're driving in the rain, it's not necessarily going to stay clean, but it's at least starting off the day with clear windows and mirrors is pretty critical.
Yeah, it's Tom, it's obviously important to make sure that the motor carriers don't forget to treat your fuel. Make sure you do that in extremely cold environments. I've even had drivers that will carry kitty litter in the vehicle just to put in areas should they get stuck. If they spend the night and it ices up around the tires, drivers are prepared by doing that. Keep a good pair of gloves in the vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all great. And I just posted, hopefully we were having trouble with this earlier. I just posted a link in the chat. We did put together a winter driving pre-trip checklist. I feel like that might have actually been the little bonus we provided people for registering for this webinar. But if you didn't already get it, you can click that link hopefully and sign up to get that, and you can get, we've split it out into heavy duty trucks or light and medium duty vehicles. All right, so again, we're gonna, you've got a minute or two to ask questions up in the Q&A tab, and I'm gonna go through just a real quick pitch talking a little bit about ITI. As Roy mentioned earlier, we've been working with training and safety folks in the trucking and transportation world since '95. And we really pride ourselves on the high quality online training that we provide. And we provide a really wide range of training from the fleets of all sorts used for onboarding and finishing programs. We also have training that is designed for warehouse and fleet managers. And all of this is able to be managed through Centix Pro, which is our LMS. It is enterprise level. It is incredibly simple to use, but it's also amazingly adaptable. Aaron, our CTO, and his team have done an incredible job of building that from the ground up. We control that code base, and so it is ours to flex however we need to. Talk a little bit more about the content that we have. We've got within ProTread more than 160 courses that run, I believe, more than 60 hours. It runs everything from heavy duty trucks to box trucks all the way down to forklifts. We're going to have a real focus, obviously, on safety, operations, and regulations, including that injury prevention and OSHA stuff. And then we have a lot of specialty courses as well, such as hazmat and tankers. This year, we launched a new line of training. ProTread is our series of courses for which we've been known. It is for fleets with heavy-duty trucks, but it also includes a lot of other things. But if you are a fleet with sedans, pickup trucks, vans, or box trucks, you might just want to focus on our ClearDrive product, which really focuses on the different needs of folks with that work with those sorts of vehicles. want to talk really quickly about one of the things that differentiates us more than most folks, which is our Centix mobile app. It works on, it's a native app for iOS or Android. It also works on browsers if that's your thing, but the mobile app is specific to iOS and Android. And what's great about this is that your drivers can take that training wherever they are. So while they're waiting for a load, while they're on lunch, they're never going to lose progress, even if they switch between devices. So if they were working on it at home on their laptop and then didn't quite finish and waiting for a load the next day, going to finish up a course on their iPhone or their Android tablet, they'll start right where they left off. And that's going to track your progress and completions. Talk a little bit real quick about the quality of the training that we do. This is also a major differentiator for us versus other companies. All of our training is mastery based. So what does that mean? What that means is as you're led through a course, and each course is very thorough, topics are built on top of each other. So you learn a basic thing, and then you have to answer a question and get it right before you move on to the next thing. In that way, everybody who finishes their training has scored a 100%. So as Jim mentioned earlier, we are in the age of nuclear verdicts. So in the event that there is a crash of some sort or an injury, it's really easy to point back to your training and say, we trained them on this, they answered this topic question correctly. There's no worry about, well, your driver only scored a 75% on pre-trip inspections. What was the 25% that they got wrong? All of our training is also done via with realistic 3D animations. And the reason that matters is that it's not just talking heads in front of a green screen. You're actually going to see how something happens. You're going to be able to see situations from multiple angles. People learn in different ways, and the ability to show a situation from different angles and actually show it happening rather than just talking about it and miming it is a major differentiator. Finally, if you're already a client, you know this, drivers actually do recommend our training to one another. We polled about 5,000 drivers, and 93% said that they would recommend it to other drivers, and 95% said that they felt it made their fleet safer. Last thing, and then we'll take these questions. The Centix Pro LMS is the tool that you use to manage all of this training. As you can see here, it's got a very simple interface with powerful features that we're always adding to make it more simple. We listen to your feedback. It allows you to assign and schedule based on any data point within the system. So what their job title is, when their hire date was, their home terminal, their CDL expiration, or maybe their hazmat expiration. You can save and reuse those assignments. So say if you have a remedial program for people who've had a speeding violation, you can just drop them in there and have 3 assignments pre-assigned to them, ready to go. You can also customize those groups. You're reporting to make sure that you actually, people have finished their training, they've completed it, or to check their progress. All this reporting can be done on the fly, but we also have a number of pre-built reports that we found that people want regularly. And last, the whole thing is totally customizable. As I mentioned before, ITI built Centix from the ground up. The code base is entirely ours. So if you want, say, different reports here on your dashboard, you can do that. If you want to call them regions instead of divisions, we can make that happen too. There's all manner of different sorts of reports that we can do. And Jim, you've used quite a bit of customization inside the system, right?
Well, I certainly have, Tom, and I'm just a big fan. I'm a huge fan of this product, and you know, we trained on over 60,000 modules last year, and again, and I've told you this many times, if I had to hang my hat on, you know, one thing that we've done throughout the years that has certainly contributed to our success, it would certainly be this product. We get rave reviews, not just from our drivers, but our clients for using this. So we certainly value that partnership.
Outstanding. Thanks, Jim. All right, so let's go answer a couple of these questions. Are any of your lessons available in Spanish? Roy, do you want to talk a little bit about our Spanish courses?
Yeah, sure, Tom. We have quite a long list now of lessons that are available in Spanish. We have closed captioning in a good percentage of our lessons now that cover that include Spanish.
Outstanding. Yeah, that's we've introduced a few more, and I think if you visit our blog, you will find a list on there. And if you have any questions, you can send us a note, through the website, and we can get you that list. Next question: do you provide FedEx ground line haul training for drivers and operations managers authorized by FedEx for training? The answer is absolutely yes, we do. I think if you go to instructiontech.net/FedEx, you will find information about our FedEx system. Do you have to be a carrier to sign on with ITI or consulting company sign up? Yes, you absolutely can. We have a reseller and referral program. Feel free to get in touch with us. I'll have my contact info shared at the end here, and you can get in touch with me, and I will put you in touch with our partnership folks. And let's see, can you recommend some training courses for winter? Roy, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the courses that we've recommended for winter?
Sure, Tom. And I'm pretty sure you probably have a list or a flyer that you can make available to this group. But, obviously, we've covered a lot of topics today, things like injury prevention, pre-trip inspections, winter driving, winter maintenance. Any of those kind of lessons would be obviously suitable for training at this time of year, as Jim mentioned. Jim, do you have any additional ones that you think that you would recommend for your drivers?
Probably the only one I would, and I may have missed that. Did you mention 3 points of contact? I think that's obviously an excellent module to think about during this time.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just posted into the chat thing our winter safety course guide, a link to that if folks want to jump into that. Next question. We talked a little bit about this, but maybe we can go into more detail. What should be different about a DVIR during winter? So a daily vehicle inspection report. What should be different during winter with those DVIRs and frankly the pre-trip?
As we discussed earlier, really, there shouldn't be an awful lot of things that are different, that they're critical actions throughout the year. However, as Jim mentioned, there are certain items that probably need to be critically looked at, things like the wipers, the lights, making sure that you have windshield washer fluid, fifth wheels, making sure they're greased. So I don't think there's an awful lot of differences, but there are certain areas you need to pay special attention to.
Yeah, I'd certainly agree.
Somebody followed up on the employer provided footwear policies. Is there good ROI for programs like employer provided footwear policies?
And I'd say absolutely. You're going to get your money back tenfold if you provide footwear. I mean, if you, as Tom mentioned, you're going to spend $40,000 on one slip, trip, or fall injury. And so you can buy a lot of shoes for 40 grand. And so I would highly recommend, having a mandatory footwear program. And hey, it just sends a great message to your drivers that you care about them.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I really, you could say that about the ROI for, and obviously I'm going to say this, I work for marketing and instructional technologies. There's great ROI for training. And Jim, that's one of the things that I've always been really impressed is your capacity to share that with your management team and even your folks on the ground, your frontline managers, about how important it is and why it's so important. Can you tell us a little bit about how you do that? I know you're a big Jack Welch Six Sigma guy.
Well, yes, and I did. I spent some time at Penske prior to coming to ProDrivers, which was owned by General Electric at the time. But guys, we have a safety certification program for our management team. Because we are a staffing agency, we don't really like to use that term. We have long-term, we're a logistics company, just very much like motor carriers. But many of the folks that we may employ may not necessarily come from the transportation world. So we can use this training, or we do use this training to give what we call a safety certification for our staff members. So that person that may come in with lots of staffing experience may not necessarily have that transportation experience, and we use the ProTred training to get them up to speed on transportation specific topics. You know, hours of service and load securement, and again, slips, trips, and falls. Just some of the we select 14 topics that everyone goes through upon, you know, coming to work for our company.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing program to really help with that sort of cultural adjustment for managers coming in, because you said it, you know, like a lot of the folks that you hire, not drivers, but people that work at the different branches and things like that. And, you know, our clients and customers have the same issue when they're hiring driver managers and things like that. They're pulling people from different industries, and they may not know the culture and the language of trucking, and training is a really great way to get those people up to speed.
Yes.
All right. Last question. I think we touched a little bit on this. How do you accommodate that extra time for traffic and pre-trips during winter? How do you deal with the unintentional slack in the system during winter?
You know, that's a tough one, Tom, and I think I'll jump in first, Roy. That the manager just has to be ready to support that driver. You've got to know that bad things are going to happen during the winter. You've got to anticipate the fact that it's going to take longer to complete that run. You know, if you've already got a tight turn, it's going to take that driver, you know, his entire 14-hour duty day. If it's tight during the summer, you can bet he's probably not going to make it during the winter because of bad weather. Again, because of that, what we talked about, that fatigue that sets in there. You must anticipate some of that and plan around it.
Yeah, I concur, Jim. I mean, you got to have that support and leadership from the frontline managers to make sure that they understand the challenges the drivers are going to face and expect it's going to take them more time to get their duties completed during the winter months.
Outstanding. All right, well, let's see. I'm not seeing too many more questions here. So with that, I want to thank both of you guys for jumping in here. Roy, thank you as always. And Jim, thank you for coming in and doing this. This was really great. We're going to have to do this again, I think.
Well, again, and thank you very much for having me, guys. And as I said when we started, we certainly appreciate your partnership. And, you know, those on the phone, if you need, you know, if you need drivers, certainly feel free to reach out to us. And I know we've got our clients on the call as well as yours. And so we value you all.
Yeah, outstanding. And I apologize. I left Jim's contact info off this slide, but if anybody wants to get a hold of Jim, you have a question for him. He is a font of knowledge. Happy to facilitate an introduction. You can just shoot us an email at info@instructiontech.net. That'll come to me. All right, well, gents, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for attending today. I can't believe we're actually finishing this topic on time, but we are done. Everybody have a safe day.
Thank you, guys.